uh, indeed, we are the issuers of our promissory obligations, and this is a right that we have, which is not just to issue them, but to issue them free of adulteration, obstruction, impediment, exploitation, and particularly of denial of the right even to make good on them, which is how we are dispossessed of all of our property under the inevitable failure of this abomination we simply call banking or interest.
Hmm.
So, how do we rectify all this, and where does this entity exist? Rightfully, it exists to be a part of government. It has no assets, except software. It's a data warehouse, and
Hmm.
basically it certifies creditworthiness by whatever standards the people intend to enforce. And of course, I provide guidelines for determining these so that you achieve the object of imposing and being able to enforce this obligatory schedule of payment. So then, say for instance, you want to buy this $100,000 house with a 100-year lifespan. You go visit the house, you see it, you like it. You got a little plastic card that's got whatever you determine to be your own security features, retinal scan if you want,
Hmm.
fingerprint if you want, signature if you want, combinations thereof if you want, whatever. You see,
Hmm.
you decide
Whatever you feel safest with.
yeah, the society can require you to do this, and they can make that optional programs as well, which is what I would advocate. Is that if I want to just use my signature, that's it. Fine, we'll let you do that. But the security of such a system is so great, it basically makes it impossible for corruption in government to transpire because we've got an auditing trail of it. It makes it impossible for people to steal money. The money doesn't exist, but in your accounts. There's no access to that. It's all securitized.
And the biggest thieves of all, the government puts them out as well.
Right, because in every case there's an auditing trail. You see, somebody who produces X and is being enriched to the degree of X cubed. The system can automatically identify that something's awry there. Some congressman or member of parliament, pass some resolution to fund some project which nobody's paying for, but all of a sudden that member of parliament or congressman or whatever is in Fat City, they stick out like a sore thumb.
That's right.
So it's going to eliminate a tremendous amount of crime. But the idea is that this common monetary foundry just certifies your creditworthiness. It looks at, my earnings and sees that I can pay the $83.33 a month, to Jason here for producing this house. It issues Jason the $100,000 into his account, and he's paid for in full. His only concern is that the integrity of the currency is maintained, because if the value of it goes down, he would be injured. And likewise, I'm interested in the integrity of the currency. I'm not going to pay more for others' production than I deem to be reflect equally toward an equal volume of my production. And so I'm overseeing that the value of money doesn't, go up, because then I'm required to produce more to pay off this obligation as I consume of the related property. So I'm not really $100,000 in debt. What I've committed to pay for the house, so it's my concern that this house, somebody else would want it if I personally want to occupy it for 15 years and move or whatever. Somebody else is going to want this house, or I'm committed to paying for it forever as it just expires wherever it is. So
Yeah,
anyway,
and the nice thing too, if I could interject, is that it takes away from the. We have this mindset now that we have to get a home and we have a mortgage and we've got to pay it off as fast as we can so we can own it. When in reality, we don't even really own it.
never own it.
You never own it. But in this system, you're like what you're saying. You buy the house, it's yours. You have ownership for 15 or 20 years, But people are thinking, well, it's you're making payments over 100 years. You're not going to live to 100 years, and that doesn't matter because
Yes, it doesn't matter. In fact, it's all the more conducive to true economy that they put a second nail on the end of each stud in the wall,
that's
so
right.
that the house stays together for 1% more effort in producing it. That it's got 50% more lifespan.
That's right.
That
And a house
justifies that
that's
effort. We make something that's truly economical then.
right, and a house that's built for $100,000 today. Just imagine that in 50 years that your kids will go out and say, well, I'm going to build a house too. And for crying out loud, they're going to pay the same in 50 years as you're paying now. Imagine that. Whereas now we're on a system where, my goodness, you're a house that's, when I was a kid, houses were $80,000.
Yeah.
And now I've got someone sitting here in the office with me right now who's just been sent something from the bank the other day, $1 million.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I
It's
was raised
ludicrous.
in a $35,000 house built in 1963, and it's like probably $1 million house now. And
Yeah,
if
and
under mathematically perfected economy, I forget what it came out to, but it's something like the payments on it would have been $17 a month. You know,
yeah.
and as I said, another thing to understand is in turn, we just said you never own a house. What did I mean by that? When you pay off this $100,000 principal, we say the debt is just the principal, but the real obligation, which is what I prefer to call it, is the principal and all the interest on it. And because all the interest is converted into further debt as we borrow it back into circulation to maintain a vital circulation, what happens at the end of, quote, paying off, unquote, a $100,000 house, say there's $300,000 of interest on it and a $400,000 total obligation at the end of whatever 30 years, at the end of the 30 years, after, quote, paying off the $100,000 house, we've actually absorbed a $400,000 further debt just to maintain the circulation so that we could, quote, pay off, unquote, that $100,000 debt.
And if that doesn't get your blood boiling, nothing will.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so this common monetary foundry just automates this whole process, and that's all it is. The common monetary foundry takes the place of the central banking system. All it is an accounting system and a few algorithms which certify creditworthiness for classes of property which have lifespans and therefore rates of consumption or depreciation. And I actually advocate what I call descaled rates of depreciation or consumption. So that, for instance, you might pay $250 a month initially for a $100,000 house, where in the last 10 years of its lifespan, you might instead pay $10 a month. So that, a house then is anything new is compelled to be consumed. And after all, this is more or less how we perceive of its consumption or remaining value ourselves. You drive a brand new car around the corner, it's not the same, as a car that's never been driven by anybody else, potentially abused, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much it. It's a mathematically perfected economy is an eradication of interest, an obligatory schedule of payment implemented by a common monetary foundry. Now, I was just asked to go over some plagiarists yesterday, and I spent quite a bit of time with this, and they were advocating that money being a debt is the problem. They're claiming that they're advocating mathematically perfected economy. They just totally mutilated the cause of failure, the explanation, all of the few principles which fix all of this. And of course, the worst thing was that then because they were so confused themselves, they assumed that it would be difficult to transform this flawed system into a solution, and they even ventured preposterous estimates that it might take 7, 8, 9, 10 years to do so and whatnot. Whereas they were stealing from work, which demonstrates how to do it in a day, which is an understatement. It could be done immediately. So I explain how to transform this system into a mathematically perfected economy. I originally produced, written prescriptions for this for the Reagan campaign before he was elected, and it amounts to simply this. We refinance all debt under mathematically perfected economy, counting all prior payments of interest instead toward principal, which, of course, just in relation to our existent debts, transforms those debts into what they rightly belong to be. At the same time, individually or together, asserting rights which are guaranteed to us in this mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation that I've written. This is the instrument by which we exercise these rights. So regardless of whether or not you're elected to office, we have this tool for the people establishing mathematically perfected economy immediately.
Right.
Of course, it would be better if you were in office, because these people in Parliament or our Congress here and elsewhere across there are countries in the world who are actually printing the money, what physical money they may need, to implement mathematically perfected economy already. This mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation provides us the means to do this. And what the reason that isn't online right now mostly is this is a worldwide mandate, and our functionality needs are something to the order of, we may need to sustain taking as many as 10,000 signatures per second, which requires registering 10,000 2 kilobyte SQL records to tables at that rate, just to sustain the signatures that might be imposed upon us at peak viral proliferation rates and whatnot. And we're looking for someone who can host us still. We don't have funding. I haven't asked for funding, and the issue is that the only people that have claimed that they can even provide such capacities to us are requiring something in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year for hosting.
That's
so
right.
That's the issue. But this mandate for mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation is the vehicle of establishing this solution, whether or not any of us are elected to power. We're taking control of our governments back. We're taking it, and it's a very comprehensive document which makes denial of our rights to mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation treason. And so each of us, it also asserts this right to as an individual to insulate ourselves from the crime against us of this central banking system. So if our eldest generation insists, no, it's okay, we're not going to take up this solution with you, hell with you, you're our own children, but we're condemning you to, financial suicide with this by passing our debts off to you, we're saying no. You side with the debt, you pay the debt, and you pay it now, because it's diminishing our capacity even to govern ourselves or to achieve the objects which we would otherwise achieve. So it's a crime against us. If you side with the debt, then pay the debt. You pay your share, and you pay it as you incur it, as is right. So we're asserting...
and it's good too, because now the elder generation who have actually they missed the boat. There is actually a chance to go back and get the horse back in and close the gate, but that window is closing. But it's an opportunity for them to do something, and for the elderly people in the riding that I'm in right now, I don't want to be rude, but for crying out loud, you've done absolutely nothing for us. You whoever you are, and everybody included, those who don't vote, and rightfully so for many years, but now that's no longer an excuse. The time is to do something, and it's to do something now, and make waves. I mean, for example, if I was elected, I'd put a cabinet minister out, and cabinet is the executive here in Canada. So I mean, everybody would notice that. So there's a chance an opportunity to do something here.
And it is incumbent upon all of us. But here, as a consequence of this mandate, we're actually asserting our rights to mathematically perfected economy and absolute consensual representation as sovereign individuals.
Absolutely.
That is, this is what distinguishes this form of law from much as what's gone on until now. I was actually kind of floored